Did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food? Injections? It's important the entire world learns of your experience.
That's enough!
The teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Houston, 20 seconds to LOS TDRS.
Nice to be in orbit.
Broadcasting from the Forest Tower Studios in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. Voices for Verity in this crazy realm of polarity. Good evening, and it's Tuesday, March the 27th, and the night is mild and wet here in the natural state. I need a boat as the first of the spring rains come down and the moon waxes on into midnight. Fire up your chakras, sync both hemispheres of your brain together, and shoot your magical beam of light through your third eye tonight with us as we peer into the void between spirituality and science. Thanks for joining us. Now, this is a live show broadcasted on the Fringe.fm and can be heard on lightingthevoid.com, TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Spreaker, iTunes Radio, Radio God FM, Radio Garden, and more by proxy via the Fringe FM. The TalkStream Live listen line is 701-719-3971, and the call-in number is 501-777-5631. That's 501-777-5631. We could sure use any donations you could swing our way. I've got a new idea for that, though. But, yeah, if you could donate, please. If you find anything of value from this show or the Fringe FM, there's a donate button on both websites, so it'd be much appreciated. I am stoked about tonight. Also, follow, like, subscribe. Everything is Lighting the Void. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on Facebook, but whatever. It's all Lighting the Void. Don't forget to grab your bottle of Ancient Life oil and get your 10% off MagicalEgypt.com. Just put in the code word Fringe while you can. Tonight, Laird Scranton's going to be joining us. It's been a long time since I talked to this guy. I can't wait. Don't forget to, so go sign up to the newsletter as well. Top right, put your name and email in. You get a free astrology ebook, and you'll get on the newsletter as well. Glad to be back. It does seem like it takes a long time to get to Tuesday again. Sure does. And I got a birthday coming up in a few days. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you what day it is, so I won't do that. You'll have to friend me on Facebook or something to figure that out, I guess. But how many of you guys have taken down your Facebook pages? That's what I'm curious about. I know there's some talk of it, and I don't know if I'm going to do it. I got to be honest with you. As mad as I am about the whole thing, I really don't know if I'm going to take down my Facebook page just yet. Just works entirely too hard on it. It's kind of one of those deals where, you know, when they told me Big Brother was watching, that was cool and all, but what have I got to worry about? What have I done wrong? I guess it's the principle in the matter. But, yeah, apparently some people have been taking down their Facebook pages left and right, and I can understand. But I don't know if you guys are going to MeWe or you're waiting on this new On Stellar thing to open up, which looks pretty cool, by the way. I did check that out. That does look kind of cool. The whole blockchain deal with the only paranormal and metaphysical uncensored stuff happening there. That looks pretty rad. I did. I signed up for it. I'm curious, man. All this new stuff's got me curious, and I think it's going to be some new, exciting times for us on social media. If you want to join us over in the chat, we are on Spreaker. If you just search the Fringe FM or Lighting the Void on Spreaker, you can do that as well. We're over there hanging out. We got Mark, Yeg, Kat, John, Ron, David. I'm sure Ramon's lurking around in there somewhere. Gigi's in there. So, yeah, you guys, this is where all the cool people hang out. Come in and hang out with us. I am excited tonight. Tomorrow night on the program, Robert Schock is going to be on. So it's a week of scholarly ventures with some of the best in the business. And that's why we're going to go ahead and just move on into the show, because I'm excited about this. This is going to be a cool night. And I think that Rusty might give us a visit. I know a lot of you guys have been asking about Rusty. I just want to tell you that he's okay, and he will be coming back in the studio eventually, just working some things out. But I know you miss him, and I've talked to him about it, and he can't believe that all you guys miss him so much. So, yes, he'll be back in the studio. All right, so let's move on. Let's get this thing going. The scientists have found a new organ inside humans. Yes, you've got a new organ inside you. It's called the interstitium. I bet you didn't know this. I didn't either. But new research is published that shows that there's been reports that have revealed that the human body contains a network of fluid-filled channels that had previously been undiscovered, kind of like the shark that was undiscovered. These spaces that are found all around your body, it's connective tissues, and it also lines the digestive tracts. It's kind of gross. The lungs, the urinary systems, and surrounding muscles. There's a team of scientists. They say that this interstitium may also explain how cancer cells spread from one area of the body to another, because that's always been a thing. We're like, how's it spreading all over the place, right? But they're searching for reasons why cancer sometimes spreads to the patient's lymph nodes, and they're looking for it. They're saying that this fluid channel is a possible answer. So lymph is, which, it's a big-time cancer. It killed the guy that lymph node cancer. It's been all in my family. I've had 3 people in my family that have had it. And, the guy that played Spartacus, Andy, I forget his last name, but that guy got it. I mean, it seems like super healthy people get this cancer. It's weird. But lymph is a fluid containing illness-fighting white blood cells. It drains into the human lymphatic system, and their interstitium may be the source of this fluid transfer. So that's cool. So now we've got another human organ. So there goes science, right? Anyways, check that out. That's pretty cool. And by the way, as far as this cancer research goes, I know you've seen the thing where they've studied mice about this immune vaccine where our immune system is supposed to kill the cancer cells. Well, they've moved that up to clinical trials in humans now. So it's actually, that's a good sign, guys. I mean, really, they've actually moved it up to human studies at Stanford. So been a long time since anything that great as far as cancer research is going has been moved up to Stanford as far as what could look like a possible cure or a vaccine. So excited to see that. Really am. All right, let's get this thing moving. I have no idea why we're just hearing about this now, but there's 2 pilots. They reported seeing a UFO in, guess where? The Arizona skies. This incident took place over southern Arizona about 3:30 p.m. on February the 24th between the New Mexico border and the Sonoran Desert National Monument, which is about 40 miles from Phoenix. There was a report that one witness, a commercial pilot flying a jet for American Airlines, said the object was about 40,000 feet and it had a big reflection. The air traffic control told an aircraft on a similar flight path to let him know if anything passes over him in the next few miles. A few minutes later, the pilot confirmed that something did pass over his aircraft. He said, I don't know what it was, but it was at least 2,000 to 3,000 feet above us, he said, and it passed right over the top of us. And I don't know if he said it was hovering or not, but he said, no, it wasn't hovering. I don't know if it was a weather balloon or whatnot, but he said it had a big, shiny reflection, several thousand feet above us, going in the opposite direction. So after questions about whether it was a Google balloon, another voice responded and said, no, it was definitely a UFO. Arizona has had more than 4,500 reported UFO sightings from 2001 to 2015. It's also home to one of the most infamous UFO cases of all time, the Phoenix Lights, but that's why I want to move there. I've got friends that live there. I know John Polk is out there. Seems like all the cool stuff's happening in Arizona as far as ufology goes. But pretty interesting stuff there. I don't know why it took so long to get that report, though. Usually when someone sights a UFO, we'll hear about it the day of or the next day. But this happened on the 24th, and it just came out. I pulled that off the Drudge Report, and they're pretty quick. Pretty interesting. I guess maybe they had to hold back a little bit. This is one of those I told you so things happening here. Google orders its first fleet of 20,000 driverless Jaguars. 20,000 driverless Jaguars, just days after the Uber self-driving car effort suffered a major setback. Of course, Google steps in, and they announced a big deal with Jaguar to buy 20,000 cars for its driverless autonomous service that expects to be operational in just 4 years. The new model, designed and built by Jaguar Land Rover, will be used by Google's Waymo ride-hail service, where you can call a car, it'll pick you up, and take you to your destination, all without a driver. The newly designed car, called the Jaguar I-Pace, will be all electric and have a range of 230 miles, similar to the Chevy Bolt. The production of this car is going to happen in 2 years, and Jaguar expects to build the first 20,000 cars by 2022. It's even weird saying that we're so close to it. 2020, 2021, 2022. I don't even know. I don't know. It's just weird saying that. The initial rollout will take place in Phoenix, another cool thing happened in Arizona, where testing has begun using Chrysler Pacifica vans. Now, they're the leader in, I guess this company, Waymo, is a leader in self-developing driving cars, and their business model includes licensing their technology to other automakers. So the thing about it is I don't know how long ago we said that they're going to be on the street. They're on the street. I mean, I guess in a couple of years, that's all it's going to take. It's just, I guess that's a good thing. I don't know. By the way, if you guys want to message me, can you please send me an email at contact@lightingthevoid during the show so I can see it. The Facebook Messenger thing I can't do. I've actually muted that thing now. So if you want to private message me during the show, just send an email to contact@lightingthevoid. I promise I'm looking for the UFO alien stuff every day, but it's always artificial intelligence, all of the stuff we've been talking about. But I promised I wouldn't fearmonger, so I'm just giving it to you, just delivering it this way. However, intelligent machines, they say a CIA specialist says fake news 2.0 is personalized, optimized, and even harder to stop. Artificial intelligence will automate and optimize fake news, and this is a technology supplier that is warning about this to the CIA. Mr. Gurley, I think his name's Sean Gurley, or Gorley, founder of CEO of Primer, a company that uses software to mine data sources and automatically generate reports for the CIA and other clients. He told a conference in San Francisco that the next generation of fake news would be far more sophisticated thanks to artificial intelligence. The automation of the generation of fake news is going to make it very effective, he said. He told the audience at the EM Tech Digital, which is organized by MIT. And he's also saying that this warning should cause concern at Facebook. The social network, has been embroiled in a scandal after failing to prevent fake news. Some of it created by Russian operatives, obviously, from reaching millions of people in the months before the 2016 elections. We could talk about that all night, but we don't have time to. But more recently, the company had been hit by the revelation that it let Cambridge Analytica, we could talk about that all night too, which is also a company that was tied to the Trump presidential campaign. Mind you, see, when I read this, I do want to delete my Facebook now. I've been going back and forth about this all the past few days. But in recent interviews, Zuckerberg has suggested that the company would use AI to spot fake news. But according to this guy, artificial intelligence is going to be used in the service of the opposite goal as well. So basically what he's saying is, long story short, that artificial intelligence is going to be putting out the fake news. So what does that tell you guys right there? If it's coming out in the news and a guy that it's kind of obvious, but I'll go ahead and say it, and a guy that has been supplying tech for the CIA is coming out and warning people about this, this is either misinfo, a half-truth, or they're already doing it, right? Just remember that when we do the news like this, so you know that the stuff is already happening. More stuff, more robots, more AI. Robots may have a role in the future of elder care. This is kind of cool, though. There's been robots that have been running Tokyo's Shinsomi nursing home, which uses 20 different models to care for its residents. The Japanese government hopes it will be a model for harnessing the country's robotics expertise to help cope with a swelling elderly population and dwindling workforce, allowing robots to help care for the elderly, a job typically seen as requiring a human touch. So all you CNAs out there goes your job. It may be a jarring idea in the West. Oh, no, it'll come over here too. But many Japanese see them positively, largely because they are depicted in popular media as friendly and very helpful. Yeah, right. And they're not taking a cigarette break every 10 minutes when you're needing something to eat or your grandma's needing some help out there. So I'm sure the robots are better. Here's a quote from one of the women. These robots are wonderful. Now, this is from an 84-year-old, Kazuko Yamada. After the exercise session with SoftBank Robotics, a robot named Pepper, which can carry on scripted dialogues. More people live alone these days, and a robot can be a conversation partner for them. It will make life more fun. There you go, CNAs. You better stop taking all your cigarette breaks and sneaking off and stuff because the robots are here to take your jobs. All right, for the story of the night. Now, you remember, if you guys listen to the show, if you're new, then I'm just going to tell you, a few months back, we talked about Mike Hughes, who is a 61-year-old limo driver, amateur rocket scientist, and a devoted flat earther who vowed to strap himself to a homemade spaceship and blast off into the skies to prove that our planet is flat. And he failed a few times. He scheduled the launch last November, but given that his mission was kind of illegal and borderline suicidal, of course it kept getting pushed back because of regulations and stuff like that. But on Saturday, this guy finally rocketed himself into the air above the Mojave Desert in Amboy, California. And he's still alive. He didn't die. I thought he was going to die for sure. But at about 2:30 p.m., he got into the rocket. And the rocket on the side of this thing, it says flat earth, right, in big words. He buckled himself in, put on his helmet, and after his friend closed the hatch on his head, his ship rigged to a bootleg missile launch system that looked a little like a carnival ride prepped for takeoff. With no countdown warning whatsoever, he just took off, shot up into the space, flying at 1,875 feet into the air at about 350 miles an hour. Now, once Hughes reached his maximum altitude, the rocket did a little 180 and started taking towards the center of coming back down towards this round planet, barreling toward certain death, and then he deployed a parachute, which left him gently swaying back to the desert. Still, he was coming in pretty fast, they're saying. And just before he slammed into the ground, he pulled a second parachute. He was carted off in an ambulance after he touched down. Somehow he managed to avoid any serious injuries. This is his quote. "I'm glad I did it. Yeah, I guess. I'll feel it in the morning, but I won't be able to get out of bed. At least I can go home and have dinner and see my cats tonight." No way this guy's a cat man, right? But he never, here's the thing though, he never said if the earth was flat. He never, I imagine, he didn't say you got to look at it, but I mean, 2,000 feet off the ground, according to this, is not enough to get a view of the earth as far as trying to figure out if it's flat or not, trying to see the curvature. But Hughes and his fellow flat earthers are, after all of this, no closer to proving their point or their theory, especially considering, the gravity. I'm not making this up. Ramon sent this to me. Jeff, actually, a few people sent me this article because we had talked about it before. I can't believe this guy did that. But after all of that, after everything he'd been through, he still didn't figure out if the earth was flat or not. That's the thing about it. That's what bugs me about this. He didn't take a picture, he didn't get a look, he didn't tell us if he even looked. I imagine the whole time he was worried that if he was going to die or not. Y'all folks are crazy. You flat earthers, you're dedicated. I'll give you that. Absolutely dedicated to proving this thing. But yeah, that's the story of the night. Golly, can't believe that. All right, when we come back, Laird Scranton's going to be joining us. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these words.
your host. Pull back the blinds and uncover the truth. This is Lighting the Void Radio.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting. We rock the paranormal talk.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Live Saturdays on the Fringe FM. The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. Dark Waters at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. Into the Paranormal with Jeremy Scott at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. Spaced Out Saturday with Joe Roop, 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern. And S4 with Eric Cooper, midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern. Live Saturdays on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk. Online at thefringe.fm.
Hey Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Wouldn't you love to have a really sharp memory? More than ever before, people of all ages are struggling with memory problems and brain fog. Whether your poor memory is age-related or due to the effects of chronic stress, you can now improve your memory while reducing stress with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. That's right, you get 2 products rolled into one. Some ingredients in Calm and Clever enhance memory and help retain newly learned information more effectively, while other ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce stress by maintaining healthy levels of the stress hormone cortisol. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. To sharpen your mind and feel calm and centered, try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll love the way you feel and think. To order Calm and Clever, call 1-800-728-9948 or visit calmandclever.com. 1-800-728-9948 or calmandclever.com.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio with Joseph Roop. Stay up to date right now, lightingthevoid.com.
Don't feed the Archons. Feed ducks instead. And listen to Shift Happens on the Fringe FM, Fridays, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific. Cortana out. Quack.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Come own the night with us. Hi there, this is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio. Every Monday through Friday, right here on KTLK, the Fringe FM, I'm going to lead you down a path of mystery, intrigue, and suspense. So whether you've seen a UFO, had a run-in with Bigfoot or Dogman, or had ghosts running around your house, this is the place to be. Spaced Out Radio, right here on KTLK.
Oh, you know what I like about me? This is Rich Giordano, host of The Paranormal Code. No, I'm serious. The show's on twice a week now, Sunday and Thursday, on thefringe.fm and Spreaker, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. Yeah, it's 2 hours. It's live. And I do a show like you've never heard before. So you're going to come here, you're going to get your information, you're going to be entertained. But you're also going to hear the truth like, you know, you won't forget. Like you've never heard before. And for those of you who've been following, thank you. Thank you for talking me into this extra night. Now I'm on twice. Great. Hey, good for you, right? The Paranormal Code. This means something.
This is Lighting the Void Radio with your host, Joseph Roop. It's the show about truth-seeking and freeing the spirit, shattering your limited beliefs, revealing hidden truths, and much, much more.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop, here live on the Fringe FM. Don't forget, tomorrow night, same time, same channel, Robert Schock will be here joining us. A whole week of ancient Egypt talk and talks about ancient civilization and cosmology. But tonight, we're speaking with Laird Scranton. And this is going to be awesome, guys. Now, Laird Scranton, just in case you've been living under a bridge and you don't know who Laird is, he's an independent software designer from Albany, New York, who writes about ancient mysteries, cosmology, and language. His work includes articles published in the University of Chicago's Anthropology News Academic Journal and Temple's University's Encyclopedia of African Religion and in the Vassar Quarterly Magazine. His book, The Science of the Dogon, was taught at Colgate University under the title Hidden Meanings, a study of the founding symbols of civilization. He was featured in John Anthony West's Magical Egypt documentary series and in Carmen Boulter's The Pyramid Code, a series broadcast by the documentary channel. He has been interviewed on a variety of radio programs around the world, including Coast to Coast AM, Red Ice Radio in Sweden, Fade to Black, and many more. He has presented at conferences on ancient mysteries, including Walter Cruttenden's annual CPAK conference on Precession and Ancient Knowledge conference, the A.R.E. Mysteries Conference, and the Paradigm Symposium. Tonight, we will discuss the ancient origins of humanity in his new book coming out, Decoding Maori Cosmology. Laird, it's really cool to have you on our 150th episode. It's awesome to have you back. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, hey, Joe. I didn't realize this is your 150th episode. That's great.
Yeah, 150. Big number there for me. So, yeah, that's a good one. You've been
doing this quite a while. What year did you start?
I started almost I would say a little over 2 years ago. I started doing this show.
That's pretty good.
Yep. And I can remember the first time I went after the cast of the Magical Egypt cast and started getting into that work. And I talked to John, just before he had been diagnosed, and I talked to you, and now I've talked to Chance. I've talked to quite a few people, and I've been trying to get you back on the show, but I know that you were helping John, and that was the one thing that was on your mind the most every time I talked to you, and I could totally understand that.
Yeah, things have been busy for the past few months. John's family, in particular, were involved with him. With he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer of the liver, the lungs, and the brain, and it was seemingly inoperable. But they took him to Houston to some specialists and managed to buy another year for him. But it was a rough year for his family.
Yeah, I remember the heartache when it shattered everybody. But you know what? Like I said, he changed the narrative. And Robert's picking up on the tours, and I can't be more excited about this new phase we're moving into. And I really believe that this is kind of the way John would want it,
Yeah, I think so too. And John honestly didn't believe in death, so there's less upset there because of that,
Right, exactly. So you started out as an independent software designer, and you got into the codes and got into studying ancient cosmology, looking at code patterns and stuff, and what you've uncovered has been incredible. But I promised you the last time I talked to you that I wasn't going to be behind. I was going to get real studied, so you didn't blow my mind. So I dug into the Maoris, right? The tribe, and what an intense tribe. So here's what I got.
Okay.
They love to fight. They carved the tattoos in their face. They didn't ink it like we do. They had a weapon that I've never seen anything like it. It looked like a teardrop weapon, but it was incredibly effective. They were really good at intimidating their enemies. There's some rumor of cannibalism. Of course, all ancient tribes have that rumor. But as far as the spirituality and cosmology goes, I didn't find much. So you must have done some real digging here.
Well, the references, I tend to prefer references that are older, because researchers in the 1800s and early 1900s and before that time were giving us the straight story. It wasn't being spun for political reasons for the most part. So the Now, the Maori are actually a much later tradition than the ones that I normally study. I normally, the cultures I've been focusing on are around 3000 BC, and the Maori, they don't even begin in New Zealand until around 1200 AD. So it's much, much later. So the references are also more recent. The best cosmology study is by a guy named Elsden Best, and he was writing in the 1920s, and he lived around the Maori, in close proximity with the Maori, for a couple of decades. And that's really what it takes with this tradition to be able to, for an outsider to be able to step into it. You have to gain the trust of the priests of the tribes, and you have to be sincerely following it, sincerely pursuing it, asking the pertinent questions and demonstrating that you're really sincere about getting at the information. For other cultures that have the same cosmology, anybody can do that. I mean, it's open to any tribe member that wants to learn about it. It's really open to any outsider that wants to learn about it if they do it the right way.
Well, I'd like to learn how to do it the right way, John. I mean, I'm sorry, no, Laird. Here's the thing. I look behind me. I've got a small bookshelf, very small bookshelf, 3 or 4 rows here, Laird, just 3 or 4 rows. When I look at your picture, you've got bookshelves from corner to corner all over, and I'm thinking, has he really read all those books? I got to know, have you really read all those books?
Well, we have different classes of books in our house. My wife Risa and I started out collecting antiquarian books, old books written, published before 1900. When I graduated college in 1975, you could buy a beautiful old leather-bound book for less than a brand new paperback. So we started buying them and collecting them. And we must have 3,000 or more antiquarian books. Then I also have the library that connects to my research for my books. And I do have quite a few shelves of books, actually, and sort of sets of them in the basement that don't really pertain to you. But you buy a book thinking it's going to have information that'll be helpful, and then it turns out it doesn't.
Right.
So I've at least surveyed each of the books that I've purchased. If it looks like they're helpful, if they turn out to be helpful, then many times I've read them entirely. In other cases, I've only read sections that are pertinent to whatever it was I was researching at the time.
It shocked me because I've got all these books I want to read, and I'm like, okay, so I want to figure out how Laird's doing this, how these guys are studying this stuff, and you know how time is, you don't have much of it. And
no, I know.
I said, okay, so what I'm going to do is read a couple chapters a night. That's still not working for me. I don't think I'm going to get through all this stuff. So you must be a speed reader, I'm thinking.
Well, I do read fairly quickly. I majored in English in college, so that was a lot of reading in and of itself. But also, the more you do this, I talk to other researchers. I talk to people like Andrew Collins and people like that. And what tends to happen when you get into this stuff is that the right sources tend to present themselves to you in certain ways. And so that cuts through the chaff a little bit, If you can be onto the right source on the first or second try rather than on the 15th or 20th try, it really makes a difference.
Right. So here's the big question before we get into the Maori, and I don't want to give the book away, but I'm just curious I want some trinkets here if you don't mind about them. But
I don't mind a bit.
Are we closer to the truth, or is it when it comes to our history, or is it just a greater mystery now?
Yes, we're absolutely closer to the truth. From my perspective, I think I pretty much touched bottom. There are aspects of it that I could still explore, but I have a good grasp of what's going on with it, an overview. The thing is that people approach these studies in many different ways, and no one person could do it all. I mean, there are some people who come at these things from natural psychic abilities or natural intuition about things that are non-material. There are other people who come out of history. There are some people who come, like me, who come out of symbology. You have the archaeologists who are studying structures. You have I have friends who are studying stone quarries in Egypt. There's so many different angles that you can approach this stuff at that nobody could ever get an overview of everything. But the Dogon compare their symbolic system to an onion, which is a crop that they grow. And every time you pull back a skin on an onion, there's another skin underneath it waiting to be pulled back. And that's the way this works. Every time I finished writing a book, I was pretty much convinced that I'd finished saying everything I had to say about the subject, and shortly thereafter, some new piece of it would open up, and I'd realize, hey, there's a whole section here I had no idea about. Another book's worth of information here to explore and write about, and there's actually still more to be discussed. I'm involved in another book right now.
Okay,
but
that's
yes, we are making headway. The symbolism is sensible, and you get to a point where you can have an overview of it, but it's really a complex system. Whoever put this together was pretty brilliant.
From Laird Scranton's point of view, because I'm the type of guy that I've been told time and time again that there's no way that we're going to know everything, but I want to know. Do you think it's possible that we can know, that we can really get the narrative as far as the basics go of it? I know Göbekli Tepe's got a long ways to go, but I think that we can.
Well, I'll give you an example. The Dogon priests admit that at certain times they tell little fibs. A good example is they have a festival of the stars of Sirius called the Sigi Festival. And they say publicly that they celebrate this festival every 60 years. But in reality, what happens is, according to the French anthropologists who studied them, in reality, after 50 years, the priests find a pretext to make an exception this time and celebrate it after 50 years instead of 60. Now, nobody in the tribe lives long enough, or very few people live long enough to catch them out on the lie, to realize that every time they celebrate it after 50 years, not 60, the reason they celebrate it every 50 years is because that's the correct orbital period of the two stars.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they publicly fib about it to disguise the value that is an important secret value in their cosmology. Now, there are other ways that these cultures lie about things also. But one of the big ones is that in exoteric Buddhism, which is the public Buddhism, they say they represent, as all of the later religions represent, that the processes of creation are fundamentally unknowable. That this is something that no matter how hard you try, you're never going to be able to figure it out. There are always going to be pieces of it that are beyond human conception.
I hate hearing that. Sorry. I just hate hearing that.
Well, you go to esoteric Buddhism, which is the private Buddhism, and they sort of embarrassedly say, well, actually, that was another one of our fibs. The truth is that these processes are completely knowable. And when you get down to the bottom, this is a problem I was having. I was writing a book called Seeking the Primordial. Mm-hmm. It's a book that because the Maori book was underway with my publisher, and it would delay the publication of the next book for quite a while, I opted to self-publish Seeking the Primordial because the material was so important to me. But as I was researching it and writing it, I was confused because it was looking to me like the processes of material creation were completely knowable, completely understandable. Actually, it rests on only a couple of dynamics that repeat in the same form or in parallel form all the way up the scale from waves to galaxies. And so that really concerned me because I knew that every tradition was saying that they shouldn't be knowable. I must be off base here if I'm thinking that they are knowable. And so that's when I did some serious research into esoteric Buddhism. There's something called Shingon Buddhism. Okay. And on that's the esoteric version of Buddhism from Japan. Gotcha. And they in Shingon Buddhism, they explain that, in fact, these processes are knowable. There are some other little fibs they tell. In the exoteric tradition, everything is represented as being dualistic. It's always mother goddess and creator God. It's yin and yang. Everything is dual. Every piece you look at, there's a positive and a negative aspect to it. You get to esoteric Buddhism, down to the bottom of esoteric Buddhism, and they admit, in fact, with a proper understanding of it, there is a perspective from which it's not dual.
Really? What do they say it is, though? Below all that, what's not dual? Is it just a singularity?
It is, but this is sort of like Matryoshka dolls, that you think you open up the Russian dolls where you screw the top, and there's another doll just like it inside. Well, you keep opening them up, and it's dual, 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 dual. You get down to the final bottom, little one in the bottom, and it says not dual, because. It's like you look at a human brain. A human brain has two segments to it, two hemispheres. Right. Now, if you look at it the right way, you can see the human brain as being a dual system. But there's also a way of looking at it where it's a single individual. And looking at it from that perspective, you don't have a dual system. You have a system that has just one strata to it.
So a dual unity, basically. I don't know.
Right.
That is confusing and perplexing, to be honest with you. But hey, it is what it is.
Yep. Also, there's one stage of the process down at the beginning where the process is inherently not dual, and so they have to find ways to represent that. And so they represent it with examples of things creator gods do that only involve creative acts that creator gods can potentially do that don't involve two players or two partners.
All of my studies and I study anything from occult literature to Massey and Egyptian stuff, everything I can, and everyone talks about this secret doctrine. And as far as I'm concerned, the secret doctrine, to me, I don't know what it is. I don't know what they're referring to. And when I say that, I mean that from an esoteric nature. The secret doctrine, whether it's the Zohar, and they have their own symbology in the Zohar that you have to uncrack the riddles, whether it's Eliphas Levi, and he's talking about the Kabbalah, or even the Hermetic version of it. And then when you look into what you study, it seems like they're talking about the same things, but I've found no secret doctrine. I think it's just all nature,
Right. It really is all nature, and it really is all science. And none of it is that difficult to understand once you get into it. The way the tradition works, if you were a priest and I was a student, it's my job to ask you the next question, the next pertinent question. And as long as I'm asking a question that's appropriate to my status as a student, you're required to give me a truthful answer. And so that's how my knowledge grows. If anyone comes to you and asks a question that is not appropriate to their status, or if you don't know what their status is, you as a priest are required to remain silent or to lie if you have to protect these some of the inner concepts of the tradition. Now, in the Dogon system, which is what a lot of the stuff ties to, I don't find a well-defined secret doctrine. There is something the Dogon call the clear word. There's certain terminology expressed in certain ways that only the priests know, but I wouldn't describe that as a hidden doctrine. That basically it all plays out in the same format. That the same process of inquiry and response will get you to the answers.
What drives you, Laird? Though, what's the biggest question on your mind in all your research? Is it cosmology or is it life after death?
I started out just with curiosity when I read the chapter about the Dogon in a book called Unexplained by Jerome Clark. And the unexplained mystery about the Dogon was that they knew things about astronomy they shouldn't know without telescopes. And I thought, well, wherever that leads, that sounds really interesting. Wherever that leads, that's going to be interesting. So that was my entry point. How could they know these things? Now, by simply asking that one question, then the issues of potential interest just mushroom from there. each answer is really opening more doors for exploration than it's closing. But my interest certainly doesn't have anything to do with afterlife. I had a general interest in trying to find out the truth about religion. And my original impression was that if I wanted to find out the truth about religion, I would have to go to the year 0 to sort it out.
Right.
And after a little bit of study, it became apparent to me that year 0 was way too late, that you really had to be looking at the era of 3000 BC to be able to sort it out. Then after a while of studying 3000 BC era traditions, I realized, hey, this goes way back farther than 3000 BC. You really have to go to 10,000 BC to sort it out. The problem is you don't have any written texts before 3000 BC. So that became an obstacle, because when I was first doing research, I didn't have the skills to be able to do what I call anchoring and interpretation without a text. The process starts with resemblances. Somebody notices that this drawing looks like this thing, and then formulates an idea in their head that maybe it represents something. Like the knee-jerk response to the Dogon talking about the stars of Sirius is, well, clearly their teachers must have come from Sirius. Well, that's the expectation, but as you dig into it and you get down into it, you realize that Sirius is important, but it's not important for that reason. That's not really the answer. So you're chasing what looks like an obvious connection to you, but isn't really. So the way to protect against it, that kind of chasing off after unicorns, is interpretations have to start with what the cultures themselves say. You start with a flat statement that the Buddhists make, or the Dogon make, or the Tibetan Buddhists make, or the ancient Egyptians make. And then you start testing the reasonableness of that statement. Say, okay, such and such a group says that the Dogon say that the Po represents the atom. Now, how reasonable is that? Well, let's compare what they say about the Po and see how that compares to what people like Stephen Hawking or Brian Greene say about an atom. Then you go to the Maori and you discover they have a concept of the Po that's just like the Dogon's concept. And they provide a slightly different set of details, but enough that overlap with what the Dogon say that you can see that it's the same tradition. And it's sort of the comparing back and forth. You start to triangulate in on what had to be the original meaning of a concept. Mm-hmm. I think that the problem solving of that, my background as a computer guy, writing a computer program is making up symbols, essentially. It's creating symbols to represent things. And the better a job the programmer does of formulating what these symbols represent, the easier a task the next guy has in trying to read the program or understand it or change it or whatever. Realizing that the quote-unquote next guy might be you 5 years later trying to get your head back into your own program that you wrote.
Do you think that's how... well, that brings up so many questions then. Do you think that that's how our religions came about, was interpretation of past symbols of programs and mythologies?
It doesn't really play out as a program. It is symbolism. Okay, to get you into the mindset of this, all of this rests on a philosophy, a very ancient philosophy called Samkhya, which was a companion piece to yoga in India. Samkhya is the cosmology. Yoga is the personal representation of those same concepts, only in relation to a person's psyche or a person's biology. I have an adult daughter who studies yoga, and very often she'll come to discuss a concept with me about yoga. She'll begin a sentence talking about certain terms that she'd learned about, and I'll be able to finish her sentence for her because the cosmology is parallel to the personal yoga.
Okay.
Okay. Wow, now
that's incredible, actually.
Now, in the mindset of Samkhya, universes form in pairs. That one universe is non-material and the other universe is material.
Okay.
And the non-material side is said to have perfect knowledge, but an inability to act. And the material side is said to have imperfect knowledge, but full ability to act. And so in Samkhya's mindset, there are routine attempts being made from the non-material side to communicate knowledge to the material side or to induce action on the material side.
Yes, I believe that. I really do. And I don't even know it was called that, but I really do believe that it's like trying to communicate with us in this painstaking way all the time throughout humanity.
It's like a cosmic game of charades. In charades, somebody gives you a clue trying to get you to say something, trying to get you to do something. Well, that's the effect of this communication. And some people pay attention to the clues and other people don't. But now, those attempts at communicating, according to Samkhya, take the form of very vivid dreams.
What about synchronicities?
Well, yeah, what seem like daily coincidences, synchronicities, the unusual behavior of animals, divination, clairvoyance, all of the paranormal sorts of things that seem to fall out of the realm of science. These are, Samkhya defines these as attempts to communicate. Now, the people who pay attention to that communication foster it. And the way to envision that is, imagine that you're a guy from Eastern Europe who's just arrived in the United States, and you end up at a party, and a loud dance party with a bunch of people, and you after spending the whole night there feeling like you have nobody you can talk to because you don't know English that well, right. You discover there's some guy over in the corner who speaks a little bit of Ukrainian, and that's your language. And so, of course, you're going to spend the rest of the evening trying to talk to that guy. He's the one guy you can communicate with. Well, the same thing happens between the non-material and the material. The people who actively pay attention to these cues and start to try to distinguish between what are real cues and what aren't, they tend to foster that communication to themselves because the non-material side is so interested in having the ability to communicate to somebody.
So I believe what you're talking about right now could define what esoteric is to begin with. And all of the societies that went secret are people that just understood that fundamental thing that you're talking about right now. Because if they ever went out in the public, even a long time ago, and talked about these types of things, they were considered crazy because it wasn't dogmatic,
They still are. I mean, I have good friends who are so intimately connected to the non-material side, have been their entire lives. I know one person who was 12 years old before they realized that most people experience time linearly.
Wow.
Now, there are fundamental differences in the way time works between the non-material and the material also. And this is one of the important concepts. It's a hard concept to grasp, but it's one of the important ones that helps to sort things out. So different people connect to this stuff in different ways. Kabbalism defines a dozen different classes of what they call mystics. Mm-hmm. And people come at just as I was saying, people come at the cosmology in different ways. They also become sensitive to these non-material communications in various ways. And the people I know who are intimately connected, have been intimately connected since they were kids, are treated like they're crazy. It takes real intelligence and real self perception on their part to be able to step outside of that when everyone in your life is telling you you're crazy and you're still convinced that there is something real to what's happening to you. It's very, very hard to rise above that, and I really admire anybody who can. I never had to go through that. I would have described myself as the least spiritually connected guy I knew coming out of high school.
Well, and just if I talking to you at first, it would seem that way. It would seem like this guy is 100% scientific, doesn't believe anything spiritual. However, you're talking about a fundamental aspect of esotericism where I believe the same things. I believe that through many things, like you say, dreams, music, divination, synchronicities, deja vu, all kinds of things that it's trying to communicate with us, and we're just not putting it together,
Now, what's really interesting to me are the mistakes. There are mistakes that are made along the way in the cosmology, and there are mistakes along the way that are made with these communications. That some of the efforts at communicating seemed more skilled than others. And I've experienced a couple of times where it looks like somebody who was just fresh off the boat was trying to run the game of communicating information and just didn't know what they were doing and created more havoc on this side than they might have intended to.
Really?
Yes.
What's your theory on that? Do you think it's just what is your theory on that, do you think? I'm not asking you for facts here.
Yeah, it's hard to sort that out. For I'll give you an example. At Göbekli Tepe, you might be familiar with the pillar that has two carved arms that sort of emerge from the side of the pillar and come down both sides of the pillar and then turn into hands where the fingers wrap around the end of the pillar. Right. Now, I looked at that for a long, long time. I eventually connected it to the Egyptian Ka symbol, which is two raised arms and hands, like forearms and hands, connected like a U. Which I thought represented the concept of duality.
It doesn't?
Well, as time went on, I became aware in a very funny way that that's not what it represented. I was working I was researching some things for a book that became Point of Origin. But at the same time, I'm always looking up, researching things for friends and colleagues and things, questions they have about language. And so on this 1 week, there were half a dozen different questions I was trying to research for different people that I thought were all not connected with each other. And one morning in July, I came up with the resolution to all 6 questions, but they resolved with words taken from the Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary from the same column and the same page of the dictionary, all 6 questions. And the 7th word on that page was a word that can mean pillar, but it also can mean embrace.
Well, then,
and I thought, could it be possible that what's being communicated here by these arms, which in the worst way don't look like an embrace, they don't look like a represented embrace, could it be that that's what was trying to be represented? And then I did some research on Egyptian words for embrace and discovered that a large number of key cosmological terms have a second meaning that also means to embrace. And the Dogon concepts were given in terms of a loving familial embrace, like the warm hug from a family member.
Okay.
I finally was able to figure out to my satisfaction that what was trying to be represented on these pillars was a warm, loving embrace. Well, the way they're carved in no way communicates that. Whoever did those carvings and planned those carvings had no sense whatsoever of how to aesthetically represent a warm familial embrace. That's one of the things I categorize as a mistake. It's not so much a mistake as a learning curve. That to see that there was a learning curve with this stuff is really, really interesting to me because it gives me some insight into how the system was planned and developed. That's really what I'm writing about now. I'm writing about the plan of the cosmology.
I got you. Fascinating stuff. So that sounds like a synchronicity in itself. If all these people came to you with different questions and you ended up finding out a common denominator out of all of that, then that was meant to happen, which also means there may be another form of communication that's happening.
Right. It's really, really interesting the way those play out. And the first thing you learn in my field of study is that there's stuff going on we can't explain because just really weird stuff happens. Some of it is overt and witnessed, so it's not just I thought something weird happened, but any observer would agree it was weird. And I have witnesses who all agreed that was really, how do you explain this? A book that in the 1990s, I was following Robert Temple's bibliography from his book, The Sirius Mystery. I was trying to pursue a line of reasoning about learning about the Dogon. And one of these books that I knew I needed, it was called Ancient Near Eastern Texts Relating to the Old Testament. A big, thick, like a 700-page book. This was before you could go online and search for out-of-print books. And so I had exhausted all of the sources in my area, the used bookstores, the new bookstores, any group that I could potentially order a book through, couldn't get it for me. I finally went to the Vassar College Library. They have an interlibrary loan service they're connected with. I figured that this is a major college. They ought to be able to get it. Turns out they couldn't get it either. So I finally admitted defeat. I came back to my wife, Risa, and I said, I'm not going to be able to get that book. I'm going to have to accept the fact I can't get it. Well, a couple of days later, a box turns up on our back doorstep.
Uh-huh.
She had an aging cousin who lived in a small apartment in Queens, New York. And every so often he'd reach critical mass with stuff in his apartment. And so he'd pick a bunch of random things he no longer needed and toss it into a box and mail it off to a relative.
Wow.
Well, in this box, Risa says, mixed in with, flags of the world and a couple of hot mitts and who knows what else other crap was in this box. And there was my book. Now, when we asked him about it, he couldn't remember even having owned the book. He had no idea I had an interest in it. He had no reason why he had sent that book to us. But there was my book.
That's incredible.
Now, another example. You need to take a break here?
Yeah, we got to take a break. But I was just going to say that that is it doesn't top it off. I want to get into that a little bit more when we come back. But this communication between the immaterial and the material that's happening that Laird is talking about, could it be using Laird to get a little bit closer than anybody else? Of course, Laird's going to be humble and say, absolutely not. I'm not that special.
I'm not that special.
We might have the man that could crack it all here. Who knows? We'll be right back.
This is Preston Dennett from PrestonDennett.weebly.com, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
35 million people in the United States suffer with debilitating migraines. If you or a loved one are one of them, you need to know about MiGrelief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist that formulated and patented the MiGrelief migraine formula. MiGrelief is a non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Try MiGrelief for 3 months and see the powerful difference it can make in your life, or get your money back, no questions asked. Go to MIG911.com or call 800-MIG-7354. You can change your life today.
So if you suffer from migraines, don't wait. Call 800-MIG-7354. That's 800-MIG-7354. Or visit MIG911.com.
Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton, Robert Bouval, Lon Duquette, Aaron Cheek, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts.
Natural Health Solutions with Chris and Ronnie.
Hey, Ronnie, how you doing?
Great, Chris.
Now, you're the CEO of GetTheTea.com, right?
Yes, I am.
What is GetTheTea.com? I mean, is this tea you buy in a store?
Well, no, it's not. Life Change Tea is just that, life-changing. Life Change Tea is an herbal tea that gently cleanses your body from intruders.
What do you mean by intruders?
Well, intruders are toxins, chemicals, GMOs, heavy metals, and more. They're in our food, in our water, in our air we breathe.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
And Life Change Tea will help you with removing these, as you say, intruders?
That's right, Chris.
Are there side effects with this tea?
Well, you might lose a little weight. When you clean your colon, you lose weight, you feel better, and you have more energy.
Wow. Ronnie, where can people purchase Life Change Tea?
Oh, that's easy. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
Ronnie, I want to thank you for being on the show. People, don't forget, GetTheTea.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Tired of talking about the weather? No, Shift. Well, Shift Happens is here to fulfill your desires as you reach that point in life where you crave tantalizing conversation about reality, ufology, the occult, and the conspiracies within, while simultaneously finding yourself desperately in need of your very own theme music, which we've got plenty of that too. So be sure to tune in to Shift Happens every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific, right here on the Fringe FM. Because the weather sucks, and you need some theme music.
Hey Fringe FM listeners, guess what? TalkStream Live has just released a new paranormal app exclusively for the paranormal community called Paranormal Radio. Paranormal Radio has a great selection of streaming talk shows dealing with UFOs, the supernatural, sacred geometry, NDEs, and much more, including a network highly recommended, The Fringe FM. You can download Paranormal Radio right now from Google Play and the iTunes App Store.
This is Lighting the Void Radio with your host, Joseph Roop. It's the show about truth-seeking and freeing the spirit, shattering your limited beliefs, revealing hidden truths, and much, much more.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. If you're just listening live on the Fringe FM, remember this show's on every Tuesday and Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget, tomorrow night, Robert Chalk's going to be here joining us. We're here with Laird Scranton, author of several books, and his new books, Cosmology of the Maori. I probably said that wrong, but the Maori, Laird.
Yes.
I was asking you during the break, and I do want to talk about this, and trust me, I want to get back into this discussion between the immaterial and the material. But how do these ancient civilizations know the fundamentals? How could they draw the fundamentals of an atom or the fundamentals of a universe or however you want to look at it? How would they even know that?
Well, what they say, okay, now remember in order to protect myself against my own wishful interpretations, my rule for myself is that the interpretation has to begin with what they say, not what I think. So what they're saying, when you get to the bottom of the tradition here in these cultures, is that somebody in ancient times who understood this stuff taught it to them and presented it to them in a way, that they could remember. It was the system of cosmology rests on metaphors and mnemonics. You know, the mnemonic devices is an aid to memory. It's like, I don't know if you ever took piano lessons. If you're learning the scale of notes on the piano, they give you a mnemonic. It's every good boy deserves favor. Every good boy does fine.
Yeah, right.
Where to name the notes on the piano. Well, those kinds of tools are being used throughout this system to make it easy as possible to remember what it's about. Now, the other thing that's being used is parallelism, that if you can say that two processes are parallel to each other, then you teach one of the processes and a person automatically has a good sense of what the other process is without having to study the second one. And that's what they've done with this. When we talk about ancient cosmology, what they're referring to when they say cosmology is how the universe forms how matter forms, and how biological reproduction happens. And those processes are seen as being so similar to one another that, almost as if to show off, whoever put this system together simultaneously described all three of those themes using one progression of symbols.
Gotcha. Okay.
So every symbol has meaning in relation to each of those three themes, which makes the symbolism a little more complicated. You can't say, what does a hemisphere represent? You have to ask, what does a hemisphere represent if we're talking about biological reproduction? Well, in that case, it represents the expanded womb of a woman,
right,
which is the same shape. If we're talking about how matter forms, it represents the expansion of mass. Parallel concept, falls in the same place in the stage of the progression, but different nuances of meaning depending on which theme we're talking about.
What if we're talking about taking a rib from Adam into Eve? Are we talking about mitosis?
Well, I would have to get down to there are ways of knowing specifically what they're talking about. The Dogon words are ultimately ancient Egyptian words mostly. Not all of them are. Some of them are from other languages, but a lot of them are from the Egyptian hieroglyphic language.
Okay.
The advantage of that is, first of all, we can go to an Egyptian dictionary and demonstrate that the Dogon haven't forgotten what this word means, because the Egyptians knew it the same way and pronounced it very similarly. So it's a cross-check on the Dogon terminology. But the second benefit of the Egyptian language is that every Egyptian word tells us its own meaning. I'll give you a very simple example. If I had had perfect knowledge of what I was doing, I would have started with a very simple Egyptian word, a word for week. It's pronounced met, and it refers to a 10-day Egyptian week. I didn't know at the time I started looking at the word that they had a 10-day week. But the word is written with two glyphs. The first glyph is the sun glyph, which is a circle with a dot in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can represent a number of things. One of the things it represents is the concept of a day. It also represents the sun.
Okay.
The second glyph is an upside-down U. That's the Egyptian number 10. So when I looked at that word, I said, symbolically, this says 10 days. And I did some research, and I discovered the Egyptians had a 10-day week.
So now, this is the same way that you do software. If you're trying to decode a program and find its fundamentals or whatever, you're looking for the same type of deal.
That's right. And if you are looking at programs, if you're a program written by a good programmer, you discover that certain prefixes always mean the same thing. If you have a field name that begins with certain letters, it always refers to the same thing. And usually, with a good programmer, there's a connection. If you're trying to represent an invoice number, you don't call it X, Y, or Z. You call it INV something.
Wow.
So you help the person with certain clues. Well, this system works the same way. Now, if you go to the ancient Chinese language, I discovered years later, their word for week was written with two glyphs. It was their sun glyph, which was really originally a circle with a dot in the middle of it, and their number 10, and they had a 10-day week. So given that one word between the two languages, we can demonstrate commonality of conception of the way the languages work in ancient times. These were fundamentally the same systems originally.
A lot of people would say that might be because the Egyptians was a bigger society, or whatever was there. I don't know if we could call it Egyptian, but whatever was there was more all over this planet geographically than what we'd know. But do you believe that at all, or do you just think the fundamentals of these things just kind of went from land to land?
No, the situation is, there have been people who've explored this from different angles. Back in the 1800s, every archaeologist who was digging up a culture wanted their culture to be the starting point of this system. And so they would announce that the Etruscan civilization was the beginning of the symbolic system, and then they would start to justify that, and they would try to trace how all the other cultures got this information from the Etruscans. And invariably, they'd bump up against the contradiction saying, that can't have been the starting point. It doesn't work. You can't bring it forward to all the places you find it starting there. And so there were dozens of these attempts made, and every one of them ended up in contradiction. They couldn't prove their theory. If you listen to what the ancient cultures are saying, this was a deliberately instructed tradition. So what the situation is, let's say you and I meet at a party, and we discover that we had the same math teacher in high school, only in different eras. But the math teacher told you all the same joke math problems and all the same little formulas and little tricks for calculating things and special terms for certain things. We knew all the same stuff, even though we had never met each other. The reason we knew it is because we had the same teacher. Well, that's what's going on with all these ancient cultures, if you believe what they say, that the reason they have all these archetype symbols in common with each other is because they were all taught them by the same teacher.
Who's now, the teacher, though? That's the thing. Well, what's the point of origin here?
Okay, well, that's the next thing. Remembering again that if a culture flatly says it, my job is to validate the reasonableness of what they're saying. So I have two systems that are a very close match for each other, two symbolic systems, cosmologies. One is the Dogon system, given in essentially ancient Egyptian words, and the other is the Buddhist stupa cosmology, the cosmology associated with a stupa shrine. It's a Buddhist aligned shrine that you find all over India and Asia. Those two cosmologies are a match for each other, but the Buddhist system is given in Sanskrit, which is a very, very different language. Mm-hmm. So because they're in completely different languages, that argues that neither one of them just received that system wholesale from the other one. If they've just received it wholesale, they should be using the same words, either all Sanskrit or all Egyptian. Instead, they have them in completely different languages.
Why can't it be simple, Laird? I just want it to be simple. It can't be, though, can it?
Well, in the end, we get to the bottom, it actually is pretty simple.
Okay, cool.
But, now both of these cultures, we can demonstrate that these are ancient traditions. Okay. Buddhism was documented by around 400 BC, and the Dogon system is expressed in Egyptian words that went out of use by around 750 BC. A lot of the Dogon references really tie to around 3000 BC. So that leaves a researcher like me in sort of a hard situation, because the Buddhists say their most sacred symbols were gifted to them by a non-human source. This is a flat statement.
Okay.
The Dogons say they got it from a non-human source, but they go a step farther. They say not only was it non-human, it was also originally non-material.
Ah, all right. Now
but
we're getting somewhere.
Not non-material the way a shaman perceives non-material, but non-material the way Moses perceived non-material. This is action in the material frame by something that was originally non-material. Okay, Now for me as a researcher, what do I do with that? I can say, I have two possibilities. I can say that both of these cultures kept every last intimate detail of these complicated symbolic systems straight for thousands and thousands of years, and then both somehow misremembered in matching ways who they got it from. Or else I have to conclude that they kept that last little piece, the piece of, hey, we got it from somebody non-human, straight. I mean, they're confirming each other. But if I agree to that, if I agree that they kept that piece straight, now I have to allow the possibility of a non-human source.
Alien, possibly. Either alien or spiritual, I'm thinking.
Right. That, again, is my knee-jerk reaction.
That's mine, too.
The Dogon, they're talking about Sirius. The logical conclusion is their teachers came from Sirius. Guess what? That's the wrong answer. And that's the problem here with interpretations beginning with us, is that we can look at something and it makes complete, perfect sense to us that this is the way the puzzle pieces fit, and we can be completely wrong about it. The only way to be right about it is to start with what one of the cultures says about it, and then confirm that all the other cultures saw it the same way. If you can do that, now you've anchored that interpretation. It begins with somebody who should have known, and you have other people who should have known telling you, yep, that's right.
I understand.
So that I have a lot of people come to me with theories. The way I deal with a theory when someone approaches me, just off the wall with something. You remember the board game Clue?
Oh, yeah.
Professor Plum in the library with the candlestick? So everybody has a hand of cards that they're looking at that are either perpetrators or weapons or rooms. Now, the guy next to you says, I think it was Colonel Plum in the library with a candlestick. Now, if you look at your hand and you're holding the candlestick, the way the game works, you know that the candlestick couldn't have been the weapon because the actual weapon that did the crime is sitting in an envelope on the table in front of you. So you secretly show the candlestick to the guy next to you and say, couldn't be the candlestick, here's why, and you put it back in your hand. Now, I deal with people's theories the same way, that if looking at my hand, I have something that clear to be able to present to them to say, it's an interesting theory, but it can't be true because, I'll do that. I'll try to do that in a nice way. If I can do it without totally stepping on, 20 years of their work or whatever it happens to be, I'll try to find a way to tell them in a nice way. From my perspective, that can't be the right answer. But if I can't, if I look at my hand and there's nothing here to contradict what they're saying, then it's like the Dogon and the Buddhists saying that a non-human source gave them this tradition, that I have to allow it. I don't have any way to disprove it.
I understand. Okay. Genevieve in the Spreaker chat's wanting to know, which Buddhism are you talking about? Or how do you spell that form of Buddhism that you were studying?
Okay. This is a cosmology that goes along with the shrine. The Dogon have a similar shrine, and the cosmologies are a match. It doesn't tie to a specific form of Buddhism. Every form of Buddhism has stupa shrines. It's the grand symbol of Buddhism. But the philosophy that it ties back to, as I said, is Samkhya. Samkhya is foundational cosmology, a philosophy that is traditionally understood to have preceded the traditions in India, the Vedic tradition, the Hinduism, and Buddhism.
I got you. It's codependent, basically, is what you're saying. The forms of research there, it's kind of codependent on the other.
Right. It's as if I had something that was fundamental to a smartphone, and you came along and said, okay, now which smartphone has this? Well, every smartphone has it. It's not an iPhone. It's not, not a particular brand of phone. Every smartphone has to have this. Well, every version of Buddhism has this.
Okay. Well, what about numbers, though, Laird? I mean, a lot of people, I know the Kabbalists tried to figure out everything with gematria and numbers. Does that help at all, or does it just make it more complex? Well,
what starts out as a simple system over time gets very complicated. The I Ching started out with what are called trigrams, three-lined figures that it used to basically do divination with. It was saying, are events going to be fortuitous or not, is all they were trying to do with it. Over time, there have been 1,000 different books written about the I Ching, each author with his own theory of what it represents and how it represents it. It gets very, very complicated over time. But part of what I'm trying to do is get back to the root. What was this like in the original form? And the way you get back to that is every culture that was originally taught it should have preserved some elements of that original form. Back in Shakespearean times, before there were copyrights, every publisher wanted to be the first publisher on the street with a copy of a new Shakespeare play. And so what they'd do is they'd send one of their guys down to the theater to hastily scribble down lines as the actors were speaking them and make a version of the play that they were going to now publish and put it on the street. You ended up with dozens of variant versions of the same play where one guy got a certain phrase wrong and another guy got a certain word wrong and they misheard things. Somebody coughed in the middle of a line, they didn't quite get it. So now, hundreds of years later, as scholars are trying to settle on definitive versions of these plays, they compared all these variant versions and they said that on average, each guy listening to this is going to get a lot of the words right. So we can look at these versions and say, now if one said tutu solid flesh and one said tutu sullied flesh, that if most of them said tutu solid flesh, that's the one we're going to go with. And that's sort of the process I work with, is that I have all these different cultures that look like they're preserving the same tradition. If I want to know what a word means, I compare all the different sources I have on that word. In particular, the Egyptian source, because the glyphs of the Egyptian word will tell me what the original meaning was. There are even certain Egyptian words whose purpose seems to be to define the meanings of individual glyphs. So I can lay out a 100 different Egyptian glyphs and what the original meaning was based on what the Egyptian language tells me it means. And if that aligns with what the Dogon says the shape means, I'm in pretty good shape. Now I can cross-check to Buddhism and say, now, what does this shape mean for you? Or I can go to, Zoroastrianism. There are any number of, I can go to the Maori, I can go to any number of different cultures and compare the meaning of a concept or the meaning of a word or the meaning of a symbol and triangulate in on what the likely original meaning was of that thing.
Okay. I understand. Your research is very extensive. That's what I'm getting at all this, Laird. It's very extensive research. But I'm still fascinated with what you were just talking about earlier, how the immaterial is speaking to the material in these ways. But the more you talk about it this way, it seems to me like it's a codependent relationship almost. Because we've got this idea, and we all have this idea, that the immaterial, the spiritual planes, or whatever you want to call them, are higher up, they're more knowledgeable because it's where we came from and this and that. But sometimes I wonder if the duality of that is, if that realm is just as dependent on this realm. You understand what I'm saying?
I have to say to you that your instincts are incredibly good. That pretty much everything you said to me tonight, that you've given it as it's your impression that such and such, has been really, really close to the mark, if not right on the mark of what I see the actual truth as being.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So I would say trust your instinct. In the end, it's treated entirely as a codependent relationship of two equals. They're treated as siblings. They're treated as companions who walk side by side. And to get at the nature of that, that's largely what my book, Seeking the Primordial, is about, is there's a very long justification for why that's true. And it's a complicated justification. It's so complicated I had to create a PowerPoint presentation for myself to keep myself on track and trying to explain it to somebody, because it's so easy to get pieces out of order. But there is a way to know what it's about. And when you get down to the bottom of it, it's about a codependent relationship between two universes that see each other as family members, as siblings, as twins, whatever. It's the knee-jerk reaction is to look at the non-material as being somehow superior or priority over the material. But in fact, that's not really what's going on. If you want to get into what's going on, we can talk about that.
Well, to me, everything is, like you were talking about earlier, dualistic in nature. Everything that's alive, everything that's conscious it has some type of codependent system. You know, if you look at the human body, I mean, it's basically designed, at least electrically, like a battery, you know, that needs charging all the time. And, you know, you've got input and outtake in several different ways, whether it's breathing or digestion or something. It's a super dependent system. And everything that's all I'm saying. I've said it a million times on the show. Like, I think we were taught as kids, you know, you live and you die and you go to heaven and you only get one life. But something inside me tells me that life is might be the most beautiful thing in the universe. That what's this play on back and forth between the two realms is the greatest thing, you know.
Right. Now, I said that Samkhya tells us that universes form in pairs. It also tells us that our universe is the fourth set of pairs out of 7 sets. That there are 14 universes that are at least being discussed by Samkhya. And they are configured like a helix.
Really?
Which calls to mind DNA.
Right.
Now, from that perspective, it might be possible that the potential for life is built right into the structure from the very start.
So it's like this force that's given, I guess you could say, based on all these principles, and hopefully something comes out of it. Like, that's the way I look at it. Like life, it looks like it's being tried all over the universe, and a few planets here and there actually get it.
Right. Now, the Dogons say that life isn't a force as much as it is a movement of forces. Now, one of the things to compare that to, that they compare it to, is the natural water cycle. The natural water cycle is the process on Earth. There would be no life on Earth if we didn't have it. It's the process by which water evaporates from oceans to form clouds. Those clouds move over the land and up over the mountains, and when they get over the mountains, rain drops out of the clouds into the streams that flows back to the ocean. That cycle, without that cycle, you don't have life. Now, the Dogon are saying, and Samkhya is saying, that there is a cycle of scrolling energy between the two universes that's as essential to life in those universes as the natural water cycle is to life on the planet.
I got you. I believe that. But I believe that, well, I want to ask you some questions about that. We got to take our last break here. It's a lot quicker than the first break, guys. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Laird Scranton. We're going to go a little bit down the rabbit hole here and talk about his book. We'll be right back, guys.
Hi, it's Jeremy Scott, and I'm the program director for the network you're listening to right now. We are the Fringe FM. You've probably noticed some changes around here lately, but what we really want is to hear from you. If you like it, hate it, or you want some more, let us know. Email talkback@thefringe.fm. Leave us your thoughts by calling 501-777-5631 or message our Facebook page at The Fringe FM. This is the new Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk.
Kids, don't drink and park. Accidents cause people. This has been a PSA brought to you by your friends at Shift Happens and The Fringe FM.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
You guys rock! Live weekdays on the Fringe FM. It's Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Monday through Friday at 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern. The Fenton Perspective with Lori and Fenton. Mondays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. Project Compass with Mark Eddy and Dave Cruz. Mondays at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Lighting the Void with Joe Rube. Tuesdays and Wednesday nights at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Big Picture Science from the SETI Institute. New Tuesdays at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. Wednesdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. The Kurt Green Hour, Wednesdays at midnight, 3 a.m. Eastern. The Paranormal Code with Rich Giordano, Thursdays at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Shift Happens with Gigi and Cortana, Friday at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern.
Is it live?
Live, weekdays on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk. On the Fringe FM app, TalkStream Live, tune in, and online at thefringe.fm.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience, Cosmic Passport.
Live Sunday nights at 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk.
Hi, this is Ryan Gable, host of the Secret Teachings radio show. If you are interested in ancient knowledge and hidden mysteries, as well as a unique and balanced perspective on conspiracies, symbols, and the occult, then join me every Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on The Fringe.
Paranormal, somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
The U.S. military holds the ability to time travel.
Jeremy Scott asks the questions that we're all dying to know.
Wow, that's a remarkable question.
Watch your step. Hide under your blankets.
The show that is going to make you think.
Prepare yourself for what you're about to hear.
This transmission is coming to
you. You're riding into the paranormal.
Live Saturday nights at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. We're live on the Fringe FM. If you're just listening to us, we're here with Laird Scranton. Don't forget, tomorrow night we'll be on same time with Robert Schock. We've been going down the rabbit hole with Laird, and it's been an incredible ride, I can tell you that. I wanted to ask you too, Laird, about the nature of the subconscious. But before I get into that, I just wanted to run this one thing by you, because you were talking about Sirius, how they were talking about Sirius B, and some people say that, well, that means the aliens came from Sirius or whatever. I read a text by Manly P. Hall where he was relating the 12, I guess it's the convolutions of the brain, to the 12 constellations. Sometimes I wonder, you know how, and this is just a knee-jerk shot in the dark here, but you know how we have this fiber optic system of information now where we transfer information through light at almost light speed. Sometimes I wonder if we're not being influenced cosmically that way by the stars and the planets as well, you know?
Well, that could be. I mean, I haven't actually studied that carefully, but, you know, the door is open to what the possibilities are here. But the ancients have not steered us wrong about this stuff. When I have a question like that, I try to find a way to get a toehold into it through ancient sources of one kind or another. What do the Buddhists say about it? What do the Egyptians say about it? That usually puts me on the right track. At least gives me a starting point.
So we were talking about this dualistic nature, and I was talking to you at break about the nature between the conscious and the subconscious. And this is something that the ancients understood as far as Renaissance magicians. They would use symbolism to affect, you know, the old cause and effect, where they could actually started learning, in my opinion, how to have this communication between the material and the immaterial. But, you know, with a lot of experimentation and a lot of successes and failures. But is this something that you look into, the nature of the subconscious as well? I mean, obviously, if you study symbology, it's got to be pretty important.
Well, the nature of consciousness as a subject is all wrapped up in this stuff. If you consider that the potential for life is built into the system at the level of universes, then the potential for consciousness is also built in on that scale. Now that you were also talking about numerology, and numerology gets at part of this. Dogon numerology is much simpler than what we see in Kabbalism and what we see with in some of the other cultures. For the Dogon tell us, okay, how can I say this? One of the things the Dogon are trying to foster in us is something called discriminating knowledge. That's essentially the ability to draw an inference from a set of facts that we know A, B, C, D, and F, and we have the sense to infer E.
Right.
Okay, so they tell us in their system of numerology that 3 is the number of the male. That connects to concepts of a Y chromosome that has 3 branches. That's what determines if a person's male. 4 is the number of the female. That connects to the 4 branches of an X chromosome, which determines if a person's female. 7 is the number of an individual. Makes sense?
Right.
Male and female individual. So, in an entirely different section of the Dogon cosmology, they happen to drop the fact. Okay, now understand that over time there are reversals in symbolism that happen. That what starts out one way in archaic times, about midway through the tradition, we have cross-cultural reversals in symbolism happening, so that matriarchy becomes patriarchy. That's probably the obvious one that you'd be familiar with. Mm-hmm. But there are other symbols that reverse, and it's confusing. How come a circle sometimes represents the non-material, and other times it seems to represent the material? There are all sorts of these kinds of reversals that happen. So looked at from the perspective, a reverse perspective of a later time, they happen to drop the fact that 4 is the number of the material. Now, the material universe represents 4 dimensions. We're also the 4th of 7 universes, which implies 4 of 7 dimensions.
Okay.
That's all they tell us. But when you have an overview of the way the parallelism works, you realize that when they tell us that 4 is the number of our universe, the universe is male, and then 4 is its number, that implies that 3 is the number of the non-material universe.
Gotcha.
But once you know that, the next step is to say 3 and 4 together constitutes an individual.
Which we're back to the whole codependent thing as far as what we have now, what we live
Right
in
now.
Right.
What you have is a dynamic between the non-material and the material that looks and functions very much like the dynamic between two hemispheres of a brain. That what we're looking at with the universe is an individual. There are questions people ask, if we were to encounter alien life, would we even recognize it? Well, there's a perspective from which, in the ancient view, universes represent an individual. This is a life form.
I understand.
And the dynamic between the non-material and the material is very similar to the dynamic between the hemispheres of the brain. Now, there's something else also going on. You familiar with the concept of the Yuga cycle in Buddhism?
Yes. Isn't it like every 26,000 years or something like that?
Yeah, roughly that, 25 to 26,000 years. A half cycle is 12,000 years. Now, there's a descending cycle where what had been more connected to spirituality becomes less and less and less connected to spirituality. There's also an ascending cycle where what was least connected to spirituality suddenly becomes more and more and more connected to spirituality. It's a cycle that goes around. It's referred to as the great year. It's compared to a year. Now, each of the half cycles there is divided into 4 segments that have certain attributes. And those segments play out very much like the 4 stages of a sleep cycle in a person.
Whoa. Yeah, I get that. So are you talking about the ages, like the dark age of consciousness? And
that's right, the Kali Yuga, and there are 4 different categories of stages of different lengths. They're all multiples of 1,200 years in the Yuga cycle. Now, in the final stage of a sleep cycle for a person, it's called REM sleep. It's when you dream. And in that stage, a person has full consciousness, but their body has inhibited them from moving because they don't want you accidentally acting out what you're dreaming. There are people who do. There are people who are dreaming that they're jumping around their room from their bed to their dresser, and the inhibitor isn't working, and they jump from their bed to their dresser.
Yeah, I've seen that before. It's wild.
Okay, so REM sleep has all the same attributes as what the Dogon are telling us are the attributes of a fully ascended non-material universe. It has perfect consciousness, but an inability to act. Now you go a step further. Not every mammal experiences sleep the way that we experience sleep. Dolphins have something called unihemispheric sleep. It's the reason they don't drown when they sleep. Half of their brain goes to sleep while the other half stays awake. And the half that's awake is helping the dolphin continue to breathe and go to the surface, take a breath, and swim and do all the things it does. When one half of the brain has finished sleeping, then they switch roles and the other half sleeps. There's a perspective from which what's happening between these two universes is that it's a version of unihemispheric sleep, even down to the way energy scrolls is very similar to the way energy scrolls during sleep. The problem is there's no way to tell which half is really dreaming the other half.
Exactly. And you get that. and this is kind of embarrassing to admit, but I've been so tired in the morning where I've gotten in the shower and phased in and out of sleep and wake and everything. And at one point I did question which reality was what. I don't know if you've ever had a dream standing up, but I did once, and it was crazy. And I got back and I was like, wait a minute, what? Was this reality or that reality? And that's when I started having aha moments because we talk about astral travel and stuff. And as you talk about how people, they might sleepwalk when they're not supposed to. Well, vice versa can happen where they're lucid in their dream when they're not supposed to be, or they're moving in that realm as well,
That's right. And lucid dreaming is a very helpful thing in this field of study. I've always been at a very high degree of control over what I dream. I can go to bed with an intention to have a particular dream, and I do. Or if I'm in the middle of a dream and it's not working out the way I wished it would, I can rewind and try it again.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
I wish I could do that. That's pretty cool. So you've been practicing.
I also pay very close attention. There was another, I've learned to pay attention to vivid images in dreams. There was one time where the connecting piece for me from Göbekli Tepe forward, I was saying that we don't have written texts to anchor interpretations on. So I needed a connecting piece to get me from what we see at Göbekli Tepe to the later traditions, Egypt and India and places like that. So during this period of time when I was struggling with how to connect that, there was a certain dream I was having that reoccurred several nights in a row, a very vivid dream. It was a party scene, very loud people dancing and lots of commotion going on, and in a sort of dark, semi-darkened room. And over in the corner against a wall, there was a figure standing there in the shadows. And the figure was wearing a long Asian robe and had the head of a mouse. Now, one of the words that I was trying to connect forward from Göbekli Tepe, I was working with archaic names for that region of the Fertile Crescent, ancient Egyptian names for it. And one of the words I was trying to link was a word named Penu. As it turns out, when I went to the Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary to look up words for mouse, I discovered the ancient Egyptian word for mouse was Penu.
Wow. I bet that made the hairs on your arm stand up when you figured that out, didn't it?
Well, I'd had enough experiences like that before that it did, but it didn't. I mean, I'm used to that sort of thing happening. So I wasn't really surprised when it did, but I was very pleased that it did. In India, the word Penu became a generic term for deity during certain periods. So this was a huge key connecting piece that came out of a dream because I paid attention to that image in the dream, knowing that if a vivid image turns up more than once in a dream, even now these days, even if it turns up once in a dream, I pay attention to it. I have enough conscious awareness of the dream to bring that into consciousness so I don't lose it when I wake up. And that really is the process. Anything that you're able to bring into consciousness while you're sleeping, you will remember. When you're starting to wake up, the details that you're focused on that get brought into conscious memory, you don't lose. That's what hypnotism is about. That there's all this other material that really, for me, resides on the non-material side of sleep. And hypnotism can go in and shift some of that to the conscious side.
Well, then I'm going to ask Laird Scranton. I don't know how many people have asked this question, but I'm going to ask you, then what about what Bob Monroe and the other studies of astral travel, where they claim to have been able to move on this physical realm and affect it in a way, even though while they were in these states, there were certain things that didn't make sense, they could still affect things in this realm. To me, I mean, if we're talking about this dual thing, then there's something in between that we haven't figured out, if they're right. You know, if all these experiences I've had in astral travel are just a dream.
As I said, your instincts are so right on the money. This is all about what's in between. That the essence of these religious traditions rests on what's in between.
The in-between state, right? Yeah, for sure.
That's where entanglement of particles happens.
I got you.
That's where all sorts of interesting things happen.
That's a much deeper rabbit hole. So when I talk about, now we're talking about quantum entanglement, I think it's real. You know, I mean, I've seen the movie Ghost and all that stuff, but I also read the book The Magus of Strovolos, where Daskalos, a man that was healing people, could affect the physical realm in his astral body. And it seems like, you know, a lot of woo-woo and stuff. But when you look at particle theory and wave theory and quantum entanglement, it doesn't seem like so much woo-woo if somebody knows what they're doing, you know?
Right. Now, I had talked about the energy that scrolls from one universe to the other. It's not just energy that's scrolling. It's also mass. If you think of an hourglass with sand in it, and the sand shifting from the top of the hourglass to the bottom of the hourglass, That's what's happening with energy and mass between our universes, according to this tradition. Now, Einstein says that when a thing becomes more massive, its time frame slows down. Mass and acceleration are equivalent effects, that when you speed up, your time frame slows down in such a way that the speed of light stays the same speed relative to you. And the only way that can happen is if you know you are accelerating, you were going 5 miles an hour, now you're going 1,000 miles an hour. Your time frame slows down just the right amount, so the speed of light is always a constant. You're not catching up with light. It's always the same amount of speed ahead of you as it ever was. So as this mass scrolls from one universe to the other universe, the time frame of the more massive universe is getting slower. That's why when astronomers use their telescopes and look way out at events that look like they happened at the time of the Big Bang, it looks to them like the acceleration rate of the universe is speeding up. And they can't explain, how could that be? How could it be speeding up? They're postulating dark energy and things to explain why the universe is speeding up. The expansion is speeding up. But it's not. What they're mistaking is, what they're really seeing is their own relative time frame slowing down.
Wow. I never even thought of it. That never even crossed my mind.
So now as this energy scrolls from one side to the other, time on the non-material side is getting quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker until you reach the point where the non-material side is virtually, has as little mass as it's ever going to have. And at that point, time is instantaneous. Everything happens at once. Now, I don't know where you're located. I'm in Albany, New York.
I'm in
Where
Arkansas.
are you? Okay, if it took me no time to get from Albany, New York to Arkansas, then effectively there's no distance between Albany, New York and Arkansas. To an outsider's point of view, if they could see that I could move instantaneously from where I am to where you are, there's effectively no distance between us. Even though in actuality there is distance, it doesn't appear that there is because time makes it look like it's gone.
And that goes back to me. That goes back to the whole thing where we're speaking in an instant time almost through fiber optics, through light.
That's right. So all these technological methods. Okay, now it's 3 hours between where I am and New York City. If I traveled there on a bicycle, it would take me a certain amount of time to get there. If I traveled there by car, it would take less time. If I traveled by train, it could take less time. If I flew in a plane, it could take even less time. If I flew by jet plane, it could take even less time. If we had a bullet train, it might even take less. Now, the distance between Albany and New York City stays the same. It's constant. But the time effectively shrinks that distance for practical purposes. And that's what's going on with entanglement, that on the non-material side, there's a space of overlap between the material universe and the non-material universe at every point in space and time. And in that space of overlap, which is shaped like the Vesica Pisces,
right,
the normal rules of material physics break down because of time frame, because the time frame in that space is so ultra quick that space is no longer a relevant concept. It's as if everything were a unity because of the way time works.
We like to call it the void here.
Now, if you were to suddenly make that space a little more massive, simply by increasing the mass, you increase the relevance of that space that's there. As you increase the mass, the time frame slows down, and so it looks like space emerges. At the same time, you're slowing down time. The space was always there.
I got you.
It just didn't seem like it was.
Okay, so then that goes back to the question. Here's my knee-jerk reaction. How did the ancients know about these fundamentals? How did they know about constellations that they couldn't see, or nebulas or things like that?
The very easy answer is somebody who knew all about this stuff did a very good job of teaching them about it. And that's what the esoteric tradition is about. That's what all the symbols are about. This is the essential problem, that with a human, if you have a person who is perfectly conscious but not able to move, That's a thing. That's called locked-in syndrome. There was a Frenchman who named Jean-Claude Bauby who suffered a stroke at the wheel of a car and had a car accident and was thought to be brain dead. Now, in France, they don't take a person like that to a hospital, put them on a ventilator, decide they're brain dead, and then take them off the ventilator and let them die. They take them home and they care for them. And so here he was, perfectly conscious inside his own head, but everybody thought he was brain dead. Wow. All he could do was blink his eyes. It was a horrific situation until one of his very careful, perceptive aides figured out that when he blinked his eyes, there was a pattern to it. And she worked out a system with him to let him blink to indicate a letter. She would step him through the alphabet. Do you want A? Do you want B? Do you want C? And when he blinked, that was a letter he wanted. He wrote an entire book that became a movie, one letter at a time, by blinking.
That's
now,
incredible.
The difference between buried alive, which is essentially what locked-in syndrome is, and having a productive life is somebody knowing that you're there. And that's the essential problem that we have between the two universes. The problem is that the non-material side, as it starts up the ascending scale where it's getting less and less massive, figures out about a third of the way into the process that where it's headed is locked-in syndrome. It's going to be essentially buried alive unless it has an aid to help it. The only possible aid is the material side. And the problem is that as the material side becomes more and more and more massive, it becomes less aware that the non-material side's even there.
Exactly. And so we become more unaware of the reality of the material world and the fundamentals of truth behind it.
Right. So just at the point where the non-material is going to most need us, we're going to be least capable of even understanding that it's there.
Oh, great.
Okay, so the non-material side says it's in both of our interest for us to cross over to the material side. Now, if you imagine airlocks with submarines or with spaceships, airlocks allow you to equalize the pressure so you can move from one area of pressure to a different area of pressure. Time frames work the same way, that if you imagine the scrolling energy between the two universes, about the middle of the cycle, which is the equinox of the great year, the time frames equalize. And when they equalize, it becomes possible to move from one to the other. So now at that point, the non-material side decides what it needs to do is establish a pattern for humanity on the material side, for society on the material side, that will actively foster sincere people who understand that the non-material is there, who can be its caretaker when it's locked in.
And are these the people that are teaching these things to us?
These are the people who are paying attention to the synchronicities. The synchronicities are the locked-in consciousness trying to say, hey, I'm here, blinking its eye.
Wow.
And the people who are paying attention to that are the ones who are the potential caretakers.
Laird, we got like a minute to get out of here. I'm sorry,
Okay.
but this has been an awesome conversation. I'd love to talk about it some more. We can a little afterwards, but we got to finish the show. Can you tell everybody when your book's coming out?
Sure. My book, Decoding Maori Cosmology, which is due out from Inner Traditions in May. It's available for pre-sale. I also have a book about the subject we've just been talking about called Seeking the Primordial that's been out since October. And any number of other books that sort of move geographically in the areas that we're talking about. People can find me on Facebook. They can message me on Facebook or they can friend me on Facebook. That's the easiest way to find me. There's a LairdScranton.com website, but it's a fan site, and I've heard that there are some problems with the site. So the better way to find me is probably Facebook.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. Just hang out for just a second. We do got to get out of here, guys. Don't forget, tomorrow night, not Laird Scranton. We could continue this, but Robert Schock's going to be on.
Say hi to Robert for me, by the way.
I definitely will. You guys make sure you don't miss that tomorrow night. We got to get out of here. We'll see you tomorrow night.